16 the day my Amish wife asked for divorce, my mother moved into our house. The kitchen smells like scorched milk and yarrow, and Rebecca won't look at me. She's standing at the sink with her back straight as a fence post, and her hands are shaking. Not bad, just enough that the cup rattles when she sets it down. The kerosene lamp on the table is hissing low. Outside, one of the buggy horses kicks the stall wall. Twice. Then quiet. Joseph. That's all she says. Just my name. Plain. I'm holding the brown glass bottle Grossdaddy left me. The lobelia tincture. 7 years old. The cork half rotted. And I can feel my thumb pressing too hard on the glass. I was going to make her a tea. She's been sick 3 months. Sick the way Amish women don't talk about. The kind where her mother came on a Tuesday and left on a Thursday and wouldn't meet my eyes in the lane. And then Rebecca turns around and says the words, quiet, not crying. Joseph, I want a divorce. I remember the bottle slipping. I remember catching it. I don't remember sitting down, but I was sitting down. My back against the cold wall by the wood stove. The tincture still in my hand. I was 31 years old. We'd been married 9 years. And my mother moved into our house the next morning. Quick pause. My name is Joseph, and this is, if these stories stay with you, if they remind you of something the old ones knew, subscribe. It's free, and it's the reason I can keep telling them. Tell me in the comments, what remedy did your mother or grandmother keep in a brown bottle on the top shelf, the one nobody was allowed to touch? And if you want to go further, a super chat or a membership, that's you telling me these old ways are worth remembering. That keeps this going. Now, back to what happened. In our community, the rule about sickness wasn't written down anywhere. Nobody sat me on a milking stool and explained it. You just watched. When somebody got sick, really sick, the kind that scares a household, you didn't call the English doctor first. You went to the kitchen. You went to the root cellar. You went to the broker if it was bad. The hospital was the last door, not the first. Dad used to say it plain. The land grew the body, and the land knows how to mend it. That's what the old ones knew. And there's a thing most English folks don't understand about Amish healing. It isn't just herbs. It's who hands you the herbs. A tea made by your mother carries something a tea made by a stranger doesn't. The remedy and the hand are the same medicine. That's the part the medical books leave out. So when a wife got sick, quiet sick, woman sick, the kind nobody names at the supper table, the mother-in-law came. That was the way. She came with her own jars, her own dried leaves, her own opinions, and she stayed until the daughter-in-law was upright again. Nobody asked. Nobody invited. She just came. I'd seen it happen at my Uncle Eli's house when his wife lost the baby in '09. I'd seen it at the neighbors. I'd seen my own ma'am pack a bag without a word the morning my cousin Mary couldn't get out of bed. I almost asked Dat once, when I was maybe 19, why does ma'am always go? Why doesn't the woman's own mother come? But I didn't ask. A son doesn't. You watch. You learn. You carry it forward without ever being told. The silence around it was the teaching. Rebecca and I married the November I turned 22. She was 20. Her name was Rebecca Yoder before it was Rebecca Lapp, and she had the longest fingers I'd ever seen on a woman. Piano fingers. Ma'am called them once, though of course Rebecca had never touched a piano. She braided rugs. She made the best chow chow in 3 districts, and she laughed at my jokes, which wasn't a small thing, because my jokes weren't good. I knew that even then. The first 8 years were good. I won't pretend they were perfect, because no marriage is, and any man who tells you different is lying or forgetting. But they were good. We had 2 boys, Amos and little Reuben, and we lost 1 baby between them, a girl, in the spring of 17. Rebecca grieved that one hard. She wouldn't let me throw out the small quilt she'd been piecing. She kept it in the bottom of the cedar chest, and sometimes at night, I'd hear her go down and open the chest, and just stand there. I never said anything. A husband doesn't, in our way. You let her have the room. Then the 9th winter came, and something changed. I want to get this right, because I've told it wrong to myself for a long time. She got tired first. Then she got quiet. Then she started spending too long in the garden, even in November, when there was nothing left to do out there but stare at frozen dirt. Her mother came on a Tuesday in February. Stayed 2 days. Left without telling me why she'd come, and when I asked Rebecca what was wrong, she said, Nothing the Lord can't carry, Joseph. Which is what an Amish woman says when she means everything. The night she asked for the divorce, the kitchen was lit by one lamp. The big one. The one with the cracked chimney Dad had given us as a wedding gift. The crack running like a hair from the brass collar down to the base. I'd noticed that crack 1,000 times. I noticed it again that night. Funny how the mind grabs the wrong things in the worst moments. There was a pot of water on the stove I'd been heating for the yarrow tea. The water was just starting to murmur, not boiling, just thinking about it, and I could smell the dried yarrow in the tin on the shelf, that bitter green smell that always reminded me of Grossdaddy's hands. Rebecca's back was to me. I could see the part in her hair under her cap, very straight, very white. She'd always been particular about the part. I asked her, "Quiet, Becca, what is it?" She didn't answer for a long time. The water kept murmuring. Somewhere out in the barn, the horse kicked again, and I remember thinking, that horse, that's the third time tonight. Something's bothering him. And then Rebecca turned around. Her eyes were dry. That's the part I wasn't ready for. I'd braced for tears. I hadn't braced for dry. "Joseph," she said, "I've been praying on it 3 months. I want a divorce." She said the English word. Divorce. We don't have a word for it in Pennsylvania Dutch. Not really. Not one anybody uses. And the English word sat in our kitchen like something that didn't belong there. Like a stranger nobody invited. I opened my mouth. I closed it. I sat down on the bench by the wood stove. My hand was still around the lobelia bottle. I didn't remember picking it up. "Becca, give me a second." That's what I said. Give me a second. As if a second could hold what she just put on me. She told me then. Not everything. Not all at once. She told me she'd been sick for months. Sick in her body and sick in her spirit. And she'd been to the doctor in town twice without telling me. She told me the doctor said one word. She wouldn't say the word, just that it was one word. And that word had broken something in her she couldn't name. She told me she didn't want me to watch her die slow. That's what she said. "I don't want you to watch me die slow, Joseph." And then she said the harder part. She said she'd lost her faith somewhere in October, and she couldn't find it. And a woman without faith couldn't stay a plain wife, and a plain husband deserved better than what she had left to give. The lamp hissed. I couldn't swallow. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. And I remember being mad at my hands. Of all the dumb things to be mad at, these are working hands, I thought. These don't shake. But they were shaking anyway. She went to bed in Reuben's room that night. I sat at the kitchen table until the lamp ran dry. I never made the tea. The yarrow stayed in the tin. And around 4 in the morning, when the sky was that color that isn't dark anymore but isn't light yet, I walked out to the phone shanty at the end of the lane, and I called my mother on the line we shared with 3 other families. She picked up on the second ring like she'd been waiting. I said 3 words, "Ma'am, come quick." She said, "I'll be there by breakfast." And she was. Here's the part I have to tell straight, because it's the part I didn't understand for a long time. Rebecca didn't want a divorce because she didn't love me. I know that now. She wanted a divorce because she thought she was dying, and in her head, in the head of a woman raised the way she was raised, releasing me was the last kind thing she could do. She didn't have the words for what was happening in her body. The doctor's one word had scared her into silence. And in our community, when a woman gets scared like that, she doesn't ask for help. She makes a plan. She tries to spare the people she loves from the watching. Neither of us understood, that February night, that what she needed wasn't release. It was a mother-in-law in the kitchen. It was somebody older who had seen this before. And my ma'am, I have to say this careful, my ma'am knew things. She was 62 when she moved in. No, 63. She'd be the first to correct me. She'd grown up 2 farms over from a broker, and she'd carried more women through woman sickness than the county hospital had. But she was plain about it. She didn't announce her knowing. She didn't tell Rebecca she knew. She came with 2 carpet bags, one full of clothes and one full of jars, and she set up in the spare room without asking, and the first thing she did was put the kettle on. I didn't know yet, I wouldn't know for weeks, that she'd already guessed the one word the doctor had said. I didn't know that she'd been making a tea in her own kitchen for 40 years, that some of the old ones had used for exactly that one word. None of us knew different. We just knew Ma'am was there, and the house got quieter, and the kettle stayed warm, and Rebecca stopped sleeping in Reuben's room by the end of the first week. The first month, I built a routine around not breaking. That's the only way I can say it. I got up at 4:30 like always, fed the horses, milked, came in for breakfast that my mother now cooked, because Rebecca was sleeping later and later, and nobody made her get up. Ma'am would set a cup of something in front of Rebecca every morning at 9. A dark tea, almost black, with a smell I couldn't place. Red clover, burdock root, something else Ma'am wouldn't name. "It's just tea, Becca," she'd say. "Drink it warm." And Rebecca drank it, every morning, without asking what was in it. That was the first sign, though I didn't read it as one then. A woman who's given up doesn't drink the tea. A woman who's still fighting drinks the tea even when she won't say she is. I joked once, only once, to my brother Amish at the feed store. "I've got 2 wives in my house now, and neither one will tell me what's wrong." He didn't laugh. He just clapped my shoulder and said, "That's how it works, Joe. That's how it works." As if every man in our district had been here once. Maybe they had. By spring, I started noticing the other men. You don't see it until you're inside it. Aaron Byler at the barn raising in April. His mother had moved into his house the winter his wife lost her hearing in one ear and stopped speaking for 6 months. Levi Stoltzfus, when we were stacking hay in June, told me his mother-in-law had lived with them for 2 full years after the second baby. 2 years, Joe, he said. 2. He shook his head and kept pitching hay. Nobody at the wood shop ever brought it up direct. But there'd be a moment. A man would say, "How's Rebecca?" And another man would say, "How's your ma'am?" And the second question was the real one. They were asking if the old way was working. They were asking without asking. That's the language Amish men use about the things we don't have words for. The hardest one was my cousin Jacob. Jacob was 44, 2 years older than me, and his wife Sarah had died 4 winters before. Cancer, the English word he could say now, because she was gone, and the saying of it couldn't hurt her anymore. Jacob came over one Sunday after meeting, and we sat on my porch, and he watched my ma'am through the kitchen window stirring something on the stove, and he said, "Quiet. She came too late to ours." 7 words. That's all. She came too late to ours. He meant his own mother. He meant Sarah hadn't told anybody until it was past the place where teas and roots could reach. He didn't cry. Jacob didn't cry in front of men, but his right hand was rubbing the callus on his left thumb, over and over, the way Dad used to do when something was eating at him. I didn't say anything. I just sat. 4 winters later, Jacob still wasn't remarried. Some losses don't close. By the time I was 32, I understood why my mother had moved so fast that February morning. She'd been 1 phone call away from being Jacob's mother. She wasn't going to be late twice. It was a Wednesday in August when I finally heard the word out loud. I was in the kitchen, late, after the boys were asleep. Ma'am was at the table writing a letter to her sister in Ohio, and Rebecca was upstairs, and the window was open because the night was warm and the crickets were loud. Ma'am set her pen down and said, without looking up, "Joseph, the doctor in town told Becca she has lupus." That was the word. Lupus. I'd never heard it before. I said it back to her like a foreign thing. Lupus. And Ma'am nodded, still not looking up, and said, "It's a sickness where the body fights itself. It comes and goes. It doesn't have to kill her. She thought it did. That's why she said what she said in February." I sat down across from her. My back hit the chair too hard. I felt the wood through my shirt. I don't know what to call what I felt. I just know my hands wouldn't stop shaking for the rest of the week. Ma'am told me then, slow, what she'd been doing. The dark tea was for the inflammation. Red clover, burdock, a pinch of yarrow, and something her own grandmother had used for what they used to call the wolf sickness, which was the old country name for the same thing the doctor had named in English. The warm compresses Rebecca had been wearing on her joints at night. Castor oil, wrapped in flannel. That was Ma'am too. The bone broth that had been simmering on the back of the stove all spring, the one I'd thought was just for soup, that was for her too. Ma'am had been treating Rebecca for 6 months without ever telling her what she was treating. Because if Rebecca had known, Rebecca wouldn't have drunk the tea. She would have said no. She would have said she didn't deserve it. Ma'am knew that. That's what the old ones knew. Sometimes the medicine has to come in quiet, or it doesn't come in at all. And the boy I used to be, the one who thought his mother was just a kind old woman who liked to feed people, he didn't understand the half of what was happening under his own roof. I tried to explain it to an English fellow once, a man named Tom who delivered our propane. He'd asked, friendly, how my wife was doing. He'd seen her thin in the spring, and I started to tell him about the tea and the broth and the compresses, and I watched his face, and his face was kind, but it wasn't following. He said, "So is she on medication?" And I said, "Some, but mostly, ma'am." And he nodded slow, the way English folks nod when they're being polite to something they think is sweet but backwards. I didn't try to explain after that. Some things don't carry across the fence. The land doesn't lie, but it doesn't translate either. I walked back inside that day and Rebecca was at the table peeling apples, and she had color in her cheeks for the first time in 9 months, and I thought, there it is, the proof. And the only man who'd asked me about it couldn't see it. That's the loneliness of being between two worlds. You hold a true thing in your hand, and nobody outside can tell it's true. The Amish life gave me 3 gifts I still carry, and I want to name them plain. The first is the smell of yarrow drying upside down in the back porch in August. Bitter and green and a little like hay, because that smell means somebody in the house is being cared for, even when they don't know it yet. The second is the sound of my mother humming in another room while she works, low and tuneless, the way Amish women hum when their hands are busy and their minds are praying. That sound is what safety is, and I didn't know it until I was almost a man without it. The third is the weight of a cup of warm tea pressed into the hand of a person who stopped believing they deserve warm things. That's a kind of medicine no bottle holds. That's the medicine my ma'am carried into my house the morning after Rebecca asked for the divorce. And that's the medicine I'm trying to learn to carry myself, now that I'm old enough to see it. Rebecca is 40 next month. She's still my wife. She still has lupus. Some weeks are hard. Some weeks are almost like before. She and ma'am sit together in the garden in the evenings now and don't always talk. The divorce word never came back into our kitchen. We don't speak of it. That's our way. Wisdom dressed in plain clothes. Tradition and truth can sit at the same table, and most nights, at our house, they do. I'm building a small herb garden behind the wood shop this summer, and Amish, he's 9, has been asking the names of things. I tell him. I make him repeat them. Yarrow, burdock, red clover, comfrey. I tell him the old ones knew. I tell him his gross mommy knew. I tell him a man's job is to learn the names so that one day, if his own wife gets scared in a kitchen on a February night, he'll know what to put in the cup. If you grew up somewhere a tea was set in front of you when you couldn't say what was wrong, and you drank it without asking, I see you. You carry something old, and that is enough. To the woman still inside the community who's been told her sickness is her secret to bear alone, I see you. To the man who let his wife walk into another room and didn't know how to call her back, I see you. To the English reader whose grandmother knew a remedy she never wrote down, I see you. To the one who lost someone modern medicine couldn't reach, and you've spent years wondering if the old ways could have, I see you. Wherever you are in this, I see you, and you are not alone. Tell me in the comments, has someone moved into your house in a hard season and quietly saved something you didn't know was breaking? I want to hear it. I'll read every one. There is so much more I haven't said yet. There are remedies I haven't been ready to share. The one Ma'am used the night Reuben was born blue. The one Gross Daddy carried in his coat pocket for 40 years. But I'm getting closer. This is there, and if you stay with me, I'll keep telling them as they come. If a super chat or a membership feels right, that's you telling me the old ways are worth keeping lit. That's what keeps the lamp on in this kitchen. Drink the tea, even when you don't know what's in it.